Hi, Kim. Welcome to the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yes, our pleasure. I'm looking forward to our conversation. What I would love to do to start is, would you share with our listeners a little bit about what you're currently doing in the health and wellness space? And then we'll talk a little bit about maybe how you got there, your story, which kind of led you to where you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. So I am a functional health coach. I help my clients get to the underlying root cause of their health issues. I use functional lab testing to do so. And so I work with a lot of people who are dealing with underlying gut health issues, some with migraines, fatigue, brain fog, things like that, a lot of gut health related issues. And we use natural protocols, diet, lifestyle, some supplementation, mindset work, and just do like a 360-degree approach to, figuring out what's going on and then addressing what's going on to get them to their goals.
Yeah, that's great. And how did you kind of end up here? Were you always in the health and wellness space? Was there kind of like a shift for you that got you here?
Yeah, I was not always in the health and wellness space, and I've always been interested in health. I'm an athlete, and I've been an athlete since I was in middle school. So I've always been interested in health and wellness, but really never paid too much attention really to the functional health space until I ended up needing it myself. And so I'd been online for a while as a hobby. I was helping a lot of coaches with like their tech work and their businesses, building membership sites and email funnels and all those types of fun behind the scenes things. But I was dealing with my own health issues. I had chronic migraines and I had chronic fatigue and anxiety and depression and a few other things. And I came across a woman one night who was promoting a holiday program. It was the Monday after Thanksgiving. I remember very explicitly. And I read her sales page and it was like, wow, somebody actually gets me. I feel like I've been on this journey for so long. And I ended up going through her program and ended up working with her. And while we were working together to address my own health issues, she actually said to me, she's like, have you ever thought about doing this? She's like, you're so passionate. Cause I wanted to be her star student. And so I was a compliant with everything. And she's like, in the conversations we had, it just came up. Have you ever considered this? And I said, I've always wanted to have my own business, like, and be all in on something and just never really figured out what, but like working with her really ignited that passion in me. And so I ended up seeking out certification and enrolled in a certification program and never looked back.
That's great. Yeah. So many of us have the same story, right? Like almost everybody that I've interviewed on this podcast, myself included, we all kind of have this pain to passion story where, you went through something, it was that you resolved it kind of out of the conventional realm. And it's hard not to then want to share that with everybody and kind of bring it to other people who need to hear it. I think when you're in the health and wellness space and a lot of the people, on your social media are in that same place, or you have lots of friends and family that think the same way, it's hard to imagine that there's people that don't even know that these alternatives exist, but they do. And there's so many more people that, need to hear it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, just like you said, like you want to share it with everybody. Like I wanted to share it, like shout it from the rooftops. I was just so, after struggling myself for so long and just like finally seeing things start to resolve a lot faster and actually resolve themselves at all. I just couldn't wait to get the message out.
Yes. Yeah. So what I would love to talk about next is what kind of approach do you believe is the most beneficial? I think you kind of teased it at the beginning, which is like root cause. Do you call yourself a root cause detective, right? Am I saying that?
Yep. Yep.
So, which is something that we kind of believe in the whole IHP space as well, which is that there's typically an underlying root cause to whatever symptoms someone's experiencing.
Right.
And so I would love to know kind of what approach do you take with your clients to kind of uncovering that?
Yeah, so I use functional lab testing like you guys, and I use a lot of similar testing. I usually start with like a gut health, like a gut test, gut pathogen test, organic acids, hair tissue mineral analysis. Those are my 3 core labs. And to really start to uncover what's going on with somebody while we're waiting for those labs to come in. We're not just sitting around waiting. We're really starting to lay some foundation opening up detox pathways and identifying maybe where there's some opportunity in their typical routines with maybe their diet and lifestyle and things like that to really prepare their body for whatever we're going to uncover with these labs. And then once we get the labs back, I will analyze the labs and put together a plan and really, we'll first map their symptoms to their results and give them some answers. I think that's the quickest win we get. And the first win we get when we do this work is after being told everything looks normal on your lab results, or, here's this medication, I don't really know what's going on with you. Like they finally have some aha moments like, oh my gosh, I actually know what's going on. And that can be pretty motivating for them to want to really get into it. And so, so I help answer those questions based on what we see in the test results. And then from there, we put together a roadmap, or I'll put together a roadmap for them. And we prioritize things based on symptoms, because I don't just read the test results. I'm also looking at their symptoms and what their health history is and things like that. And we map that out, and I put together a high level roadmap that I present to them. And then we also start working through the different phases of the roadmap, little by little, layering things in, not to overwhelm them, more so to say, hey, this is what we're going to work on right now. I always like to call myself, like at the front, I'm like this root cause detective. And then once we get into it, I'm like their project manager, and I call them like the project implementer. And I'm like, hey, here's your project plan. And I take away all the guesswork. I become your Google, if you will. Like, you don't have to try to figure out how to do this. If you need a resource, I've got a resource for you. And here's your plan. Let's go work on this part of the plan for now. And then we layer things in as the roadmap progresses.
Yes. Yeah. I love that you said that, because like a lot of times, sometimes clients, and I'm sure you've gotten this too, will say like, thank you for like everything that you did. And it's like, I didn't do anything. I just gave you the plan. You had to do the plan in order for it to work, right? Like the implementation of the plan is the most important part. And for some people, it's just being able to relax into, I don't have to Google everything. I don't have to figure this out on my own. I love that you said at the beginning that there's, a lot of times the first step is just hearing, okay, there's something wrong. Like we finally found something that needs to be addressed and worked on, and no, you're not crazy, and no, everything's not quote fine or normal with your blood work. There's actual imbalances that if we address them, you could see some significant relief in your symptoms. And for some people, that relaxes their nervous system and their bodies so much that is the first step to them, quote unquote, healing or getting well, because for so long they've been frustrated with like, I don't feel good, but everybody's telling me I'm fine. How is that possible?
Right. And then you can feel very deflating when you are being told that everything's fine. You're like, I don't feel fine. And am I stuck dealing with this for the rest of my life? Because there doesn't seem right now to be a solution for that.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And a lot of times when they know that there is a solution, it can be incredibly emotional for them to, finally see, okay, because then there's something to work on. Right. And for a lot of people, yes, there's a little bit of hard work ahead, but knowing that there's a potential for change for so many people can be life-changing for sure.
Yeah. Huge.
Yeah. I would love to kind of know, what do you see, and maybe it's equal as far as what's the number one root cause that kind of gains the most, I would say like attention in your practice? What do you see most people struggling with the most if we're talking about things at a root cause level? Or does it kind of span?
It does span. I mean, I think that we do see a few things a lot, but it's tough to pick one single thing. I would say I do see like poor immune function quite a bit, which the GI map will tell us a little bit about that. And you have a lot of people out there doing like a candida cleanse or something like that, and they've been trying this for a year or 2 years, and they haven't really been seeing success. But when we uncover that maybe their immune function is not at the level that it needs to be, that might be why part of the reason why they're maybe not seeing the success that they are looking for, because they don't have what I always call like the army or the troops to go to battle to go after that thing. And so working on immune function is a top priority so that they have the energy and the energetic potential to be able to address these things. So I do see that quite a bit. I would say I often see some sort of underlying gut infection, whether it's H. pylori or just a bacteria, dysbiosis, and some candida. I think I see those pretty regularly too. And then nutrient deficiencies or imbalances are a pretty big thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I feel like the nutrient imbalances too, those are ones that you can kind of address fairly quickly and right off the bat, which sometimes gives like a quick win while you're working on, getting rid of some of the other things that shouldn't be there, like yeast, candida, right? I always say there's stuff that you need more of that you don't have enough of. That's the deficiencies. And then stuff that's there that is too much and shouldn't be there.
Right.
Sometimes take longer to get ahead of, but the deficiencies, I mean, the soil is depleted, the, plants that animals are eating are depleted. And so then even like animal proteins depleted in nutrients. I mean, I just think that at this point, there's so many people who are simply nutrient deficient from the amount of stress that they're under, the amount of nutrient dense foods that are available or people are eating, that's one that's so huge for so many people.
Yeah, really. I see that a lot too. And to add to that too, I think the other piece of it, on top of the fact that the food we're eating just isn't anywhere near as nutrient dense as it used to be, is that people also have like this digestive insufficiency. And so they could be eating all the healthy food in the world, and yet their body's doesn't have the tools to absorb those nutrients as easily either. So then that just like adds another layer to that nutrient deficiency piece.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Or stress is impairing digestion. And if you're not digesting it, you're not absorbing it. Yes, it can be so layered. And when you finally, I find that sometimes it can be overwhelming to the client when you like talk about all the layers, right? But if you just like peel one layer back at a time, you're able to just keep them on that trajectory of finally addressing the root of it all.
Yeah.
And do you find that it takes oftentimes, longer than maybe someone may anticipate to get somebody to where their symptoms are resolving? Do you have a way that you get them small wins in the beginning and then, work on the longer stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, healing your body takes time, and addressing these things can take time, especially depending on how long it's been going on for and what all is going on. But quick wins is a big piece because that's what keeps us motivated. And so they always say, like, how do you eat an elephant? Well, it's one bite at a time. And so, we have to recognize that this is going to take time. It's going to take patience, even though there's, some products out there that are saying, oh, take this and in a week you'll be completely fine or what have you. Like, I think we've been kind of conditioned from a marketing and advertising standpoint that things can resolve quickly. If it was that simple, then we probably would all be out of a job. Right. So we do have to, there is some recognition of that, but it's like, and I have a weekly check-in I do with my clients. They fill out a series of questions. And one of the questions is what are wins that you've had over the past week, and recognizing those wins, even if they're seemingly small wins, they're signs from the body that, hey, we are on the right track, because your symptoms are really a communication tool from the body that, hey, something's going on inside and please pay attention to me. And so when we start to say, hey, I had like a whole 3 days where I woke up, I got out of bed, I was so full of energy and it was amazing. Maybe the fourth day I didn't feel as good, but we had 3 days for the first time in weeks or months or years, possibly, that we felt good. Like, hey, that's a win. And so we're always celebrating the wins with the recognition that, hey, this may take some time, but we're on the right path, and our symptoms are telling us that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because the truth is sometimes we have to be prompted to think of those things, right? For somebody who's been maybe in a position of illness or depletion or, symptoms that are unpleasant for so long, that can be the thing that like we tend to hyper focus on. And it's hard not to, it may be hard at first to kind of see where things are going well. And it isn't that you just go from feeling crummy to all of a sudden feeling amazing. There are times where, okay, there's a few things that went well. Oh, now I like took one step back, but okay, I can take 3 steps forward, and realizing on average, if we look back, things are getting better. And I love the fact that you do those check-ins, because getting clients to just prompt them simply to think that way is important, because we can kind of, stay in touch with more of what's maybe going wrong.
Yeah, 100%. And we're able to course correct in the moment too. If like we are recognizing that, hey, something's feeling a little off. Okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's dive in a little bit deeper to that. And so we can try to troubleshoot and see what, if anything, needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to kind of how you practice and, the whole root cause thing, do you find that there's clients who come to you and they're like at the end of their rope, typically, they've tried all the other things, whether it be conventional medicine? Do you find that more people are understanding the whole, root cause? Do people come to you to prevention, or what are you seeing kind of from a clientele standpoint?
I would say most of my clients are coming to me because they've tried a bunch of stuff and it just hasn't worked. They've tried different diets, they've tried medications, or they've gone to their doctor and their doctor is like, I don't really know what to do with you, but here, try this medication. Maybe this will help this time, or something like that, where they may not be at the end of their rope, but they feel like they've tried quite a few things, and this is a different approach, like because they like the lab piece of it a lot, where they're actually getting some data on themselves versus just doing like a general cleanse or general boot camp or something like that. This is very specialized and targeted for them, so that they know that everything is formulated specifically for them and what they need, and doesn't include anything that they don't need. So I find that we do see that quite a bit. Because I'm an athlete, I also do work with some athletes that are looking more from like a prevention or optimization standpoint. And so those I do see a little bit of that in my practice, but I would say that's about, 10 to 15% versus everybody else's, what I just explained.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting how, depending on kind of where you are at your point in life too, certain things matter. Performance, if you're an athlete, obviously is number one. And I think athletes are coming around to understanding that it is a lot more about just, getting enough calories, to have enough energy for like things matter, and optimizing their health in a different way than I think ever before. I've worked with a few ex-professional athletes, and they talk a lot about how 2 of them specifically were football players, and how they were just like instructed to eat enough calories so they had enough weight so that they could, and how they used to eat really unhealthy foods just to do that. But now one of them actually is still in football, and he's coaching and doing other things. And he's kind of seen it change in a sense, to where the health is, a piece of the puzzle now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I think hopefully it's going in that direction, for the sake of athletes, for sure.
Absolutely. Build habits long-term for them too, so that, they don't get done with their sport and move on, transition away from that sport and then continue with those same habits that they had while they were in the sport.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Because if you think about it, then you're, not only is something that you've identified with like a, really successful career, whether it's college or high school or even professional, but now you're kind of left with all the unhealthy habits, and the career piece is gone too, right?
Right.
Okay. So I would love to know a little bit about when you're practicing. Do you have things that you find work incredibly well to motivate clients when there is a setback? So I think we have a lot of coaches listening, and inevitably there's at some point, right, in the journey, maybe somebody is doing a candida cleanse and they like get rashes. Or how do you help clients with kind of their mindset moving forward to stay, kind of on track? You mentioned course correct. What's your approach to when, things don't go as perfectly planned?
Yeah, I think part of it is that I start with that mindset work early on, because mindset's a muscle, in my opinion, that we have to build. It's harder to it's harder to, pull out a positive mindset when you do have a setback. And so if we can start working on the mindset muscle early on in the process. So first thing I do actually is in an onboarding call, I go over, a lot of us have seen that graph of like what we think healing is. And it's like this, line, straight line going up to the right. And then what healing actually is, and it's, either squiggles or, lots of peaks and valleys and stuff like that. And so I talk about that right from the get-go. So we talk a lot about that. I introduce what like Herxheimer reactions are, die-off reactions are early on in the process as well. And then if a reaction comes up, like let's say, like you said, they get a rash while they're doing a candida cleanse, I remind them of both those things and remind them and tune in back into that. I give them a ton of resources as well for like mindset podcasts and books, and recommend certain books based on what challenges that they're dealing with, or kind of where early on, even where we might find that they're struggling with their mindset. And also do a lot of work with like starting to rewire the script, flip the script, if you will, on some of the negative talk. Because if like, then I found myself in this position too, when I was dealing with chronic migraines, is like, it's when you don't feel well for such a long time, it's easy for you to have a lot of negative self-talk. And so working on rewiring that, one of the things I learned early on in my business journey was that, we think so many, depending on who you ask, 15,000 to 90,000 thoughts a day. It's a pretty big gap, but a lot of those thoughts are on repeat. And so if those thoughts are recycling over and over in your head, and you have a lot of negative thoughts, we have to actually intentionally capture those thoughts and then re-script them. And so we do a lot of work around re-scripting a thought, like, hey, this is the thought you're having. What do you actually want to think? Let's work on how we start to shift that belief. So those are some of the things that we do as far as like working on that. And then, also, I think the other thing is like, hey, let's do an evaluation of if something isn't going well right now. How's your diet been? How's your stress level been? How's your sleep been? So we kind of go through that checklist of like some of the foundational things again. And they start to recognize like, oh yeah, I've really fallen off of, sleep. I haven't been sleeping well. I've had a ton of stress lately. And so we talk about those types of things too. And so there's a lot of things that I feel like I do from that standpoint that is like working on that throughout the entire process, rather than it just being like in the moment, like, okay, let's have like a call and dive only into mindset right now.
Yes. Yeah. I love that you say that. Yeah. Because if you lay the foundation for what the mind really will have to, what part it will take in the process, it's an important part. And like you said, if you're dealing with somebody who's been having chronic symptoms for so long, it can be such an ingrained part of like who they even believe they are, or what, they have for struggle. And oftentimes it's flipping that script and being able to understand that there's something on the other side. And so I love that you kind of do that from the beginning, and it's not like, oh, you're having a setback. Well, let's talk about your mindset.
Right.
Because oftentimes that's the hardest place to do it, is when we are kind of down and out, right? If you can do it when you're having moments of success and understanding that like, okay, this is the path that you're on, sometimes it's easier to manage, to shift as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you've worked that muscle. And so it's easier for you to stop yourself and be like, wait a second. Let me catch myself in the moment. Because once you're down the rabbit hole of negative self-talk, or, anxiety or stressing about what you're dealing with, that it's a lot harder for you to come back out of it until things calm down.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. Yes. And the solution to setbacks is also bio-individual, just like the solution to the problem is bio-individual. And yes, for some people, I see this all the time. It's like, oh, well, I haven't changed anything that I'm eating. I haven't, changed my supplements. Everything this is the same, except like I did have like this major stressful thing happen. And it's like, oh, okay, well, that was probably, partly the trigger. Or for some people, it's, like you said, sleep changes, but there's usually a variable that kind of throws things off. And when you're able to troubleshoot it with a coach, it's so important, because then you don't get discouraged and throw in the towel. You have someone that kind of has like you said, the plan, and rewriting the plan if we need to is a way to kind of pivot.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And that's the value of people doing like a one-on-one coaching experience with somebody, because you are going to have a setback. You are going to have days where things just aren't feeling as good. And the fact that you have someone to lean on who can provide different perspective, I think is huge for the client, because we're still moving the needle forward, even though maybe we're going a little slower at that moment in time, but at least we're still keeping them moving forward rather than just like them throwing in the towel, for example.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned books. Sometimes I ask my guests what books they love in whether either like the health and wellness space or mindset. But if you had somebody maybe who like had a setback and you were, trying to get them in a good headspace, do you have any favorite books? It could be about anything, honestly, for either practitioners or practitioners to suggest to clients.
Oh man. Yeah, I have a whole list, but I'll like one of the books that I love a lot of my clients to read is very inspirational for them is Food Saved Me by Danielle Walker. It's actually an autobiography. And I feel like people connect so deeply with other people's triumphs. And she was diagnosed with an autoimmune, like a GI autoimmune condition when she was 22. And she was very, very sick for a long time. And she wasn't getting any answers. And so what she did is she took control. She always loved to cook, and she took control, but she also didn't want to give up her favorite foods. So she took control of the situation, and she said, how can I make my comfort foods, but in a healthy way? And so she's been on this quest now for, I don't even know how long. I don't know how old she is now, but she's got several cookbooks out and memberships and stuff. And she's not dealing with flares and such. And what I love about that is she had also been told like everything's fine, or your food doesn't have any impact on your gut health or anything like that. And so she's proven that. And she was on Island A, where a lot of people are, and she's over here on Island B, and she's very successful now. And so I find that book a book I recommend early on in the process, because it's really motivating for people to be like, hey, like I can be like her too. And so that's a book that I find myself recommending over and over again.
Yes. Yeah. Because we can find comfort in other people's ability to do what we know, we have to do. And if somebody else has done it, well, then that means we can too. And can be motivating. It can be comforting. It can be inspiring. So yeah, I love, personal stories. I mean, this is why we have this podcast, because we're able to kind of bring not only information to coaches about, what we do with our clients, but also success stories of coaching and, can I have a thriving practice and whatnot? And so, yeah, it's all about understanding that if there's other people doing what we want to do, it's possible, and it can be really motivating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If people are listening and they kind of want to find out more, where are all of the places that you show up? So social media or websites, all of those places.
Yeah, I hang out on Instagram a lot. I'm there pretty much every day. My handle is just my first name dot last name. So Kim Heintz, KIM.HEINTZ. And then my website is kimheintz.com, and I've got a lot of resources over there. And, I've got a lot of information over on my website as well. And I'm available there's a contact form and stuff there too for people to reach out. So those are the two primary places you can find me.
That's great. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. I enjoyed this interview so much, and I thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks again. It was really fun to be here with you and have this conversation. So thanks a lot.
Thanks, Kim.